and welcome back to Conscious Migration. As I'm still editing my next video, I had the opportunity to speak with one of my favorite YouTubers, TOON. TOON, or Michael, debates members of the Flat Earth community. Yes, people who truly believe the world is flat. And I'll show you my full interview with him in just a minute, but I want to quickly touch on why I find his work interesting and, as strange as it may sound, why I believe what he does is really important, especially given the nature of the bizarre ideas I myself not only cover on this channel but personally subscribe to. Even though on the surface he and I seemingly have very little in common, I'm a huge supporter of what he's doing. So let me give you a bit of background. When I found TOON's channel, I had no idea flat earthers actually engaged in debates, and I was curious. How do you even begin to support a position which not only directly contradicts mountains of ever-growing evidence and basic physics and logic, a position that has to ignore a number of fairly basic tests that the average person can carry out for themselves? Ultimately, a belief that would require a degree of secrecy and control over such an expanse of information that alone makes it absurd in and of itself to me. I marvel at what it would take to do this, and for what, when you stop to consider the unfathomable amount of effort and coordination and money and resources it would require to pull off such an immense lie for years, for hundreds of years. It should be the end of the discussion right there on what the shape of our planet is. So I was curious how a flat earther would formulate their answers. How did the world work in their eyes? How do they account for basic questions like, if the world is flat, then why don't we see the sun throughout the entire day? Where does the sun disappear to on a flat earth? How does gravity work in their thinking? Why do ships disappear over the horizon bottom up? And as I watched these debates, I found that they did indeed have answers for these questions, answers that required a complete reworking of our observable understanding of physics and astronomy and even basic geometry. I became fascinated with how the only thing that often outweighed their total lack of understanding of basic scientific principles was their arrogance. Google the Dunning-Kruger effect for more information. The tactics they'll resort to in order to avoid admitting the numerous cracks and contradictions in their worldview are often fascinating studies into how the human mind can twist essential load-bearing components to the very nature of this reality we all share, while seemingly unaware that they're doing it. They'll often instead point the finger back at TOON and accuse him of using logical fallacies. And they do this with supreme confidence in their position. I've watched flat earthers get cornered in these debates about, for example, how the observable movements of the moon work in their reality, and their escape route was, well, the moon isn't actually a solid object. It's not a real thing. It's just a projection. The whole thing's just a hologram. And they'll say this without a single shred of evidence. And that was the explanation, that fit the hole that they needed to cement. And they believe it. And that's the stuff that really scares me. The prospect that we actually live on a flat plane and we've all been lied to in the most incredible fashion humanity has ever known is far less scarier to me than the kind of mind required to carry such an idea out. But before we go pointing our finger at flat earthers and other people with crazy ideas and laughing at how illogical and silly they are, we damn well better be prepared to hold ourselves to the same standard. If what you believe in requires you to operate from a completely different set of rules for rationale and logic than what you use for sorting through the rest of your life, then you should ask yourself why. If you really are convinced the topics, for example, I cover here are true without question, from astral projection to clairvoyance to UFOs and so forth and so on, you have to ask yourself if you believe in them because of direct personal experience, which you've examined critically, or do you just want so badly for them to be real, you'll perform any mental gymnastics you need to. You'll contort your own standards for evidence and logic so that it supports your fantasy. The way you wish things were. And you better believe I've asked myself those same questions throughout my entire journey, and I don't plan to stop doing that. I have to question everything that I believe in. I've been watching my nation and this world succumb to the kind of poor reasoning like it's a virus. And we're seeing a wave of what boils down to anti-intelligence, anti-reason, anti-basic common sense. And we're watching it eat away at our social and political structure. I will believe this without any evidence because that's the way I want my world to be. I deserve to have the world reflect what I want it to look like. And people like MC TOON are shining a light directly onto some of this poor thinking that's becoming more and more acceptable in our public discourse. A light needs to be shown on this virus. We need to pick it apart, we need to question it, and we need to push back on it. So for me, this isn't really about flat Earth at all. It's about something far deeper. And when it comes to my own participation in engaging with strange ideas, ideas that often conflict with our understanding of basic science, I take that very seriously because I have the utmost respect for the scientific method. When I say our scientific models about how and from where consciousness emerges, I don't make those statements lightly or without any reason. I don't care if you believe in the same things that I do. I don't care how spiritual or how religious you are or how enlightened you imagine you are. None of that gives you a get out of being rational free card on this trip. And I know that doesn't win me a lot of support from a growing portion of the spiritual or New Age crowd. And that's a shame. If your beliefs can't handle a critical eye, then they're pretty weak and pretty shallow. Okay, so without further ado, here's me picking the mind of MC TOON, a man who is pushing back on really poor reasoning. Thanks so much. Let's just do a couple introductions in general, because I'm guessing that the majority of people, anybody who's following me, they probably might not know who you are. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself if you can, and then I'll explain who I am, because I'm guessing if you do anything on your channel with this, that they're not going to know who I am either, or why I wanted to talk to you, why I wanted to have this conversation. So let's start with you though. Who are you? What do you do? What's your deal there? Michael, is it okay if I call you Michael? Because if I start calling you MC TOON, I'm going to start calling you Mick TOON. Because I see it, and I see that all the time, and I know that the Flurfs do this all the time as well.
It's MC TOON like MC Hammer, because I'm a rapper.
You're the worst rapper in the world.
I'm the worst rapper in the world. I don't rap. I don't like rap much. I like metal. So yeah, the Flurfs self-identify by calling me Mick TOON, because in their echo chambers, I think that's what they call me. So, but yeah, MC TOON. But you can call me Mike, or Michael, or TOON, whatever. Okay. So yes, I debate flat earthers every week on my channel, about usually on a Tuesday night, about 8 p.m. Central Time. And I've been doing that for about 3.5 years, every Tuesday. I also have another channel that I don't do the live streams on. So that's on my MC TOON live channel. My main channel is called Conspiracy Tunes.
I saw that as well. I think I subscribed to that as well. Yeah.
Yep. So that's where I do my recorded videos.
Okay.
I don't know. It's coming up on, it's probably 5 years ago I saw that there were people that were still discussing this strange topic, that they think the earth is actually flat. I had been, though, involved and interested in things like that for quite a while, since 2001, when a whole bunch of conspiracy people started making claims about what happened in New York City. People, a friend from college had sent me, he would constantly send me stuff in an email with everybody in the CC field.
Okay.
And I just reply all with, no, here's this, here's where all these things are wrong. He stopped doing that for some reason. Because I'd use his mailing list and reply to all of them. I actually did have, because I would have like these Chrome windows that have a bunch of tabs in it. And I had, for a long time, I had a couple flat earth content things prior to 2014, 2015, when it took off on the internet. So I had been familiar with it for longer than the internet had been talking about it.
Okay.
En masse.
All right.
So anyway, that's how I got into it, was just some science videos and then some debunkers, and I started making videos about 4 years ago.
And my guess is this was never what you intended to happen with any of this. I've got to assume, right? I mean, this is not
No,
some, no, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm assuming that you went down a path, you kind of fell into this, and now you're, this is kind of your deal now. This is kind of your, yeah.
it
Okay.
became a hobby. Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a video because somebody did $100,000 challenge to use flight charts to show a route with 3 90-degree angles.
Okay.
And I did it online, and he said, no, I meant paper flight charts, which of course he didn't specify until after the fact. It's a classic moving the goalpost. So I made them right here. You can see on the wall here, these are the actual paper flight charts that I put together.
Oh,
And then I
okay.
put them, that's 2 of the 3 legs of the route that I put on an actual like PVC half dome or half sphere, dome in my kitchen. And
Okay.
I record because they won't lay flat when you put them together.
Okay.
They're real flight charts that
Yeah,
pilots really used for decades.
absolutely.
And if it's wrong, then those pilots obviously never got to their destinations and they all died. But I haven't seen the reports on them.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I've got a lot more questions for you, but let me briefly, let me just give you a brief rundown of what it is that I've been doing, who I am, what I do, and why I wanted to reach out to you. So again, my name is Ian. I'm originally just an artist and a cartoonist. That's what I've been doing forever. And I started writing books. I've published a couple of books now over the last few years, and most of my material deals with something in the paranormal sort of set for the most part. So that is what my channel is all based on. I look at paranormal claims. I look at anything that's something that is not generally accepted by mainstream science, and we're looking at anything from spiritual claims, paranormal, anything that might be listed under the supernatural area. And I have a background in this personally, and this is what confuses the hell out of people, and also what pisses a lot of people off. I firmly believe that, for example, as one thing, that what they refer to as astral projection, I believe that that is absolutely a real phenomenon, for example. However, and this is from personal experience, it is nothing I can prove. It's something that I'm trying to build models around, trying to explain why I think this is very difficult to prove, and maybe it might never be proved. It's something that you either personally have to experience for yourself, or you may not ever really understand what's going on, or you may never believe it. I would hope that no one would believe it on faith. So, given that I'm also technically an atheist, which pisses off everybody. So that's that. No one wants to hear that. The atheists don't want to hear about astral projection, and any spiritual or mostly the paranormal people, yeah, they don't want to hear about atheism. But I would say that all of this, I believe that I find there's an explanation for it somewhere. I cannot say that I understand it. I don't really understand. I'm not a physicist. I don't know what's going on there. But for some reason or another, I would say that whatever consciousness is, for example, as one of the strange things I believe, consciousness is not strictly bound to the mind and body. However, given that, what I'm attempting to do here through my work is talk to those who have some perhaps strange beliefs, who maybe have gone down a road of, they've picked up some strange supernatural ideas about things. Sometimes I don't really deal with the conspiracy stuff too much, but I am trying to encourage them to be rational, to be skeptical of their own experiences. And I'm trying to go down that path with speaking to those people who are also, skeptics and rationalists and want to use some degree of logic, but they are also, they're like, but, does that mean I have to throw out perhaps some of these experiences I've had? What does that mean? So I'm trying to carve a path through that. And that's, it's not a real popular message. Like I said, that's not like something that someone wants to hear, but I try to talk about these things with some degree of skepticism. And in my free time, I do not look at a lot of spiritual shows anymore. I mean, I went down that path for 30, 35 years or so, you know, reading all of the religious and the spiritual stuff, trying to make some sense of it. And I've picked up myself over the years a lot of strange ideas, especially when I was younger. I was about 19 or 20 when my experiences started happening to me. So, you know, I did not have a real robust concept of how to be rational about things, and that was something I had to eventually learn how to do. But so now in my free time, mostly what I watch science channels, I watch debate channels, I watch a lot of atheist debate. I've been on a lot of atheist kind of debate sort of channels and whatnot, but I found channels like yours to be fascinating. The people that you are talking to, the way their minds work, it is angering to me, certainly on one level, and I really wish most of them would shut up, I guess, and that's how I feel about most people who have really strange beliefs. It seems like, you know, you can't prove it. You shouldn't be in a debate. Like, for example, the things that I believe, I would never go into a debate show and try to argue rationally what it is, you know, what I support, the things I believe, because I believe that from a logical standpoint, anybody with a bit of a rational background, who has some science in their background, would be able to blow me out of the water. I would lose that debate. I'm very aware of this, and I'm kind of trying to encourage others, like, hey, you know, it's okay if you have personal experiences. Maybe don't try to go and argue about, you know, thinking that you're smarter than all the other researchers out there over the years. So I like your channel. I like how you deal with them. You seem to be patient for the most part. I've never seen you too upset about what's going on, but
it happens.
I've seen you threatened even. I mean, what was it, Santos? He's another person who calls himself a spiritual person, who I'm just like, you know, those are some of those people are possibly some of the people who I hope they're not followers of mine. I would think that they'd see the type of person I am and say, I'm not really a person who, you know, wants to follow this guy. But yeah, how do you deal with that? I'm kind of jumping ahead of what I wanted to ask you, but how do you feel about that? How do you feel when because you are pissing people off sometimes?
Yeah, well, when they're upset like that, then because of how I approach it, I think to myself, well, mission accomplished. So to explain, when I do debates, or when I do videos, recorded videos, I'm shining a spotlight on these things and the flaws in them, right?
Yes.
So if somebody says something that's definitely not true,
right,
then fine, everybody can say that, but let's shine a spotlight on that and examine their actual position, and sometimes let them just draw it out themselves, and then
yes,
shine that spotlight on it and say, okay, well, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. So, and when they get upset, then it shows it. I think it shows a lot, because
sure,
if you have a rational position based on logic,
yes,
and somebody shows that you are wrong,
right,
well, you have two choices, kind of, right? You can say, oh,
right,
well, I was wrong.
yeah,
Or you can go the other way and say, even though all of this, you know, these factual things contradicted, I'm still going to hold that position, which of course people have the privilege of doing that, but that's when it converts from being factual to being a religious position. And for the most part, flat earthers have a religious position about the earth being flat, because when they get into it, they start by watching, typically they'll watch a couple videos that go over a whole bunch of things that are just wrong. And if you have any background in physics or math, you'll say, well, don't, easy, wrong, and you'll identify these things. But the people who fall into it, you know, the target market for these grifters are the people that don't have a strong background, which is plenty of people. There's a lot of people that don't have a strong physics or science background. And so they watch these things, and then, you know, for example, just a prominent flat earther claims that the horizon always rises to eye level, so that no matter how high you are, they say that the horizon is at eye level. Well, that's easy to test.
They don't test, do they? They
no,
don't do a
don't.
lot of tests, and when they do, it sounds like if it's a good test, they've not enjoyed the responses or the data
No.
that they've come back
There's
with.
generally two tests that they ever do. I can get into that in a minute, but
sure.
Everybody that has a modern smartphone can install for a small fee.
Right.
The app isn't free, but there's on the iPhone, it's called Theodolite, the Theodolite app, and I forget the name on Android, but you can look it up. And in an airplane, you can just point it out the window when you're at elevation, and you can see, does the horizon rise to eye level? And eye level is 0 degrees, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, if you're surveying, 0 degrees is up, 90 degrees is eye level,
right.
Or 0 degrees, just whatever. Different people use different terminology, but you can look at that, and then at 35,000 feet, the horizon drops more than 3 degrees. But if you don't have a way to measure it, well, then you might say, well, I don't know, I can't tell, I don't have a reference. And humans' eyes aren't good at measuring, 3 degrees without a reference point.
Right.
So if you're not willing to actually test it empirically, then you could easily be fooled by it. So that's a person who's not thinking critically.
Right.
So when you accept something without a critical examination, that is indoctrination. You've been indoctrinated if you have accepted something uncritically.
Exactly.
So,
I agree.
And to be clear, in elementary school, you are told a whole bunch of things, and you're not given the high-level physics explanations for these things.
Right.
You're not ready for it when you're in elementary school.
No,
when you're in
no.
middle school, you're not.
Right.
When you're in high school, you barely are. So
yeah.
you could make a case that that's what they're doing. And sure, you're going to have to trust your teacher, because you can't, when you're in 3rd grade, go do these things.
Yes.
So all right.
Do you have a goal out of all of this? Like, what is there something that you are trying to do at the end of the day out of what are we trying to do with all this?
I have a few short-term goals, intermediate goals, right?
Okay.
Like, it's my hobby. I enjoy doing it. So if I enjoy doing it, I've accomplished a goal. YouTube pays me money to do it. So
yeah, excellent.
I enjoy that YouTube pays me money. I have Patreon as well. So I have a couple different ways in it, but it's not right. I'm still writing email software during the day. I write software. That's my profession. So I'm employed, and I don't expect that's going to change.
Yeah.
And if the flat earthers went away tomorrow, I would be fine with that. I would be happy with that. And so a kind of a long-term goal, I would love to see flat earthers just become a thing of the past, and a blip in history of, look at these people that were not very bright actually used to think that the earth was flat, and they don't anymore. These people have all gone away. I would love that. And I would find a different hobby. I have no shortage of potential hobbies.
Right? So have you been successful? FTFE has mentioned this a few times on his channel. I pretty much, when it comes to this content, I watch you and Craig for the most part.
Yeah.
And he said that he feels he's pulled over a few over out of the dark side, and has talked some sense into them. Have you had some of those experiences where you feel like, hey, I think I've really got through to somebody?
Yeah, I do. It's usually not a public conversation, but I have, I do receive is typically emails from people saying, I used to be leaning this way, and I don't anymore. So
that's got to feel good.
It does. Yeah.
I mean, that seems like an accomplishment on some level.
So that's an altruistic goal that has been successful. The other part, and this is not easy to measure, is because when you shine a spotlight on disinformation and illogical thinking, it's my hope that somebody might find it, and then when they're later confronted with these topics, they will have been educated well enough to say, oh, I see through that trickery.
Yeah.
And those people aren't going to be sending an email saying, hey, I right, that they'll just say, oh yeah, flat earth is dumb, and I saw this other thing and I was able to see through it because of the background that I got from that. So And that's not measurable. It's a hope. It's an altruistic thing, but
Yeah, they don't like their evidence. I think I was just watching one of your last debates. Mango tea, is that right?
Mango
Was
was
that
a
right?
fake flat earther.
So and I've seen that a couple of times too.
Yeah.
What that confuses the hell out of me. It's like, what? Yeah, what is that? They want they want a
There's
spotlight for a few minutes. I don't know.
I think they do it. Some do it for fun.
Okay.
So Mango and I don't intend to debate. We call them Poe.
Yeah.
Poe's law. You can look up Poe's law.
I've heard this, yes.
But I don't intentionally debate them. I try to shuffle them out before I get, unless it's, if it's obvious satire, then yes. And I it's a judgment call on what's obvious or not. And so this Mango tea guy because that coming into it, I thought he was legitimate, but I hadn't had a lot of conversations with him.
He was speaking all the right words.
He was.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is parroting, right? There's about 20 things that flat earthers say. And
yes,
so that they're going to say those things. And he was going down a few of those, but then I asked a specific thing. His answer went off script from what they normally say. He said, it was when he said that the Hubble telescope was between Venus and Mercury. I'm like, hold on. And he's like, it's on NASA's website.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Okay.
No flat earthers ever said that. That because that NASA never claimed that, not even close. So
right.
Like, oh, wait a second. This guy's not for real. So then I asked a few more clarifying things to shake him out, and yep, he was fake. But the guy before that, Trace One Infinite, that I found on Twitter.
He rapped for a minute, and I think I couldn't watch much more of that one.
That was bad. Yeah. He called himself a failed rapper. I appreciate that honesty.
Okay.
And he did, and this he said this many times. He's not good at math, and that's almost always the case with
yes. Yeah, no, you're right.
Because the simplest way to understand that the earth could not be flat is the sun could never set. It's really elementary school geometry.
I've heard them go around that one a lot of times. I've tried to wrap my head around, how do you get to that one base? That's a real basic one. How does the sun ever? Why can't you see the sun always? Yeah, that's a good
all
one.
of their explanations are these really vague things that when you actually test them, in geometry, you're like, that didn't work. They just say it's perspective.
Perspective. I've heard that. Perspective. It's perspective. Perspective
can be applied. There's ways to do the geometry for it. Right? It's
right.
For the most part, it's solving triangles, and you can do that in a basic way. It's usually introduced to middle school, and you can do it using trigonometry in high school. It's mandatory for people in the United States to graduate high school to have covered these topics. But we forget. I can't fault somebody for not remembering everything they were taught in high school. I don't. Nobody does. And you could fail the entire trigonometry section of math class and still pass the class. Right? So I get that. It's when they're saying that they know better than somebody else. Now that's a problem.
Yeah.
I can apply.
There it is right there. Yeah.
I can apply perspective mathematically. And they're like, oh no, that's all fake. How's that fake? Where was an error in what I did?
Yeah.
They can never say that. They never explain what was an error. No. They just have these vague words. No, it would do this, but okay, well, how can we test that? Where was this explored previous? Nothing.
Okay. So I want to ask you a few more. I want to get a little bit more philosophical, perhaps psychological, because that's really what fascinates me when I try to figure these people out, and I hear their responses, and I hear them struggling with you, like they're getting angry, and you're nailing them on something, and I can feel the pain from them on some level, and I'm sometimes wondering, this hurts. I know that on some level you're going through some sort of agony, and then they'll come back 2 days later and do the same damn thing again and say the exact same crap, and I'm like, what's going on?
There's a name for that. There's a name for that. It's the Flurf reset. When flat earthers sleep, all of their short-term memory goes away. Some of them, they don't even need to sleep. It'll happen during a debate.
What's going on there?
They'll do the Flurf reset.
So what is that?
It's a religion.
Okay.
That's why.
It is. And that's why I think it's not about flat earth. That's my feeling is, the more I've watched these, this could be anything. I feel like flat Earth is just the thing that they fell into, but it could have been anything, any
Yeah. And
claim, any crazy claim, right? And some of them do believe, it's like, well, also the Earth is hollow, and also the moon is it goes on and on with, so what do you
yeah,
make of all that? The pure insanity. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was you or FTFU who said that the flat earthers are the one breed of people who they believe everything. It's not just that. It's like
they do.
it's like every conspiracy all rolled up into one. So what do you make of all that?
It's for some people say it's the pinnacle conspiracy theory, because
Okay.
there aren't a lot that are more ridiculous that you could actually say is reasonable in well, it's not reasonable, that's not the word, because flat earth isn't reasonable, but there seems to be a line of demarcation where beyond flat earth it gets to be just too far for most people. So some people say that there are really lizard people that are shapeshifters that are
Oh
in
yeah,
control, but for
absolutely.
the most part people are like, that's too far. They so that's one example of the too far. There's a fake one that they say birds are fake, birds are not real.
Yes,
That's
yes,
absolutely a fake one.
yes,
Nobody
yes.
actually believes that I know of, but if
I
you
had to
look
look
into
into that.
that, if you want,
I did, and I had to look into that
it's
was
comedy.
yeah. And I'm like, that's good. But again, in this day and age, satire is dead. It seems like I don't even do cartoons anymore because I honestly don't know how to make absurdist humor in this world anymore. Really,
For the most absurd thing you could think, there might be somebody that
yeah.
actually believes it, and that goes back to Poe's law.
Okay.
All right, so one more example. Some
Yeah.
people think dinosaurs are fake.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Um, and so there's a little bit of a demarcation there that I think most, actually, no, I think most flat earthers do think that's the case.
Yeah.
There's another
Okay.
one that they do that's quite ridiculous, that's very common, is Tartaria. They think that there used to be ancient civilizations that had high-tech stuff, and then that
Oh,
there was some thing in the late 1800s that was a mud flood that covered up everything to hide these deals. And
Graham Hancock he has a show on Netflix now who talks a lot about that very kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yes,
don't
I've
know
heard.
about him, but yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I've heard some of those guys. They have been on Joe Rogan a few times and whatnot, and yeah, and
It
some of
takes,
their
I think it's harder to accept that than flat earth, even, because
yeah,
it's 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 out there. When you
yeah,
look at what they're actually saying, it is out there.
yeah. And so, do you find that most of it seems that most of them they do have there's a we call it that it's a cult that they have kind of gotten into this as a religion, but
Yeah,
also specifically they all do seem to be there's a religious motivation behind most of them. It seems like, I mean, many
yeah.
of them seem to have a very very strange biblical view of why why this is important, why there is a firmament, all that sort of nonsense. Is that your experience as well,
Yeah,
or
I don't know. I've thought, and people have asked before, I can't name one atheist flat earther. Um,
okay, yeah,
maybe there is, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I
yeah,
don't, to my knowledge, there aren't any.
okay.
There are certainly a lot that are outside the norm, but
Yeah,
you do find a large number that generally you fall under, or used to fall under, the umbrella of Christianity.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
being an American and an English speaker, there are apparently a subset of Muslims as well. And I know that there are Jews. I have a friend that lives in Israel, and he deals with them in Israel. So it does tend to be more of the Abrahamic religions, because it
yeah,
comes back to that roots. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe
Some of the
others are
things
too,
in
but
Genesis or whatnot.
yeah. So they what I found is a lot of them, they come in because they're like, well, the Bible says this,
right.
and it doesn't. It requires a very specific interpretation, and you have to
Doesn't
be
it always?
led you
Yes.
have to be led into that specific interpretation.
Okay.
So, and there is no biblical scholar that can really say, and they generally don't, that theirs is the absolute definitive only correct interpretation. I think most biblical scholars will be humble enough to accept that. But the flat earthers, they tend to take that position. Of course, generally they're not biblical scholars.
Right.
They're just
right.
they don't have a background in it, right? They've tied it together with their religion. Like, well, this is the only way to interpret this one particular thing.
Yeah.
They say, but obviously people differ, and in the end, it doesn't matter. It's their interpretation. So
Right.
if reality contradicts their interpretation and they stick with it, then what they're saying is that the Bible is wrong.
Yeah.
Which I think they don't really want to have that position.
No, that's
right?
inconvenience. That's inconvenience.
Yeah. So, and when I press them on that, they don't come back with measurements of the shape of the earth.
Never.
They almost always come back with, here's a different verse saying what I interpret it to say. Well, hold on a second. You missed the whole point of what I just said to you. If you are correct in your interpretation, you have just claimed the Bible is wrong because the earth is factually a globe.
Right.
They say, well, I don't care. Okay, that's a religious position then. And
absolutely. So getting down to brass tacks, what do you feel you've walked away? Are you walking away from this with some kind of insight about maybe specifically how to deal with people when they have a strange belief? Is there a line of questioning or an approach that you have found seems to work over the years better than others? One of the things that I commended you for, and this was back, it was one of your, and it was recently, it was within the last few weeks. What did you say? You said to them, you asked them, tell me, what evidence would you accept?
Yeah.
What evidence would you, and you really nailed, I'm like, that's it. That's the question right there that they don't want to answer, I bet, because they don't want to give you the parameters of what is acceptable information from you. And I thought that was a good one. And I saw them all like blah, 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 the hand wanted to dodge that. But what have you learned about what insights from dealing with them on this?
Yeah. So I tend to phrase it like, what's your standard of evidence? How are you going to evaluate evidence? Because we should all have a consistent standard of evidence.
Sure.
This is how we test claims and match them to reality. Right. And you should not have one for when it matches your pre-selected conclusion and one for when it doesn't match your pre-selected conclusion. And to be fair, we all have this possibility.
Absolutely.
All of us. It's not just the people that embrace it fully. We all can. So it's a good thing, good reminder for myself and everybody to not let ourselves do that. When we have our sacred cows, we should be ready to get rid of them.
I mean, that's something I've learned as I've aged. Like, I've learned to say comfortably, I don't know when I don't know something, or, hey, I was wrong about this thing. And that is something that I see in the kind of crowds I generally deal with. There are exceptions, but the new age crowd, whatever you want to call them, they've got their, golden cow, as you say, their golden calf that they don't want to touch. So are you,
if I have more on that, if I could.
No, please.
I have found that for the most part, those that have gotten past a certain threshold with flat earth, they didn't get there through logical thinking. They're not going to get out through logical thinking. It's going to take a major something. I'm not going to be it for them. And so, like I said, my goal is to prevent people from falling into it. The people that are already into it, it will probably for many of them, it's not possible. For others, it might be something like their father went on a trip to space. Somebody they trust.
Right. Yeah.
I flew on Blue Origin. I looked out the window myself.
Yeah.
Right. So could you to somebody that you know and trust, say, nope, that was all fake. You're a liar. Can they do that? And I think the list of people that can still say that is quite hopefully small, but not zero. I'm certain that there are many flat earthers, and I know a few of them that would say to a family member that they trust and love, nope, you're still wrong, because that religion, they just won't let go of it.
Yeah. So let me ask you one final thing before we close up here. Thank you, first of all, for everything that you've been saying. It's awesome. That's everything that I knew how this would go. I was very confident that you would have some great answers about this stuff for me. But do you have any advice, Pete, for someone who possibly is, dabbling in some of these ideas? Possibly they're younger, they're just kind of picking up some ideas about maybe spirituality or maybe something in some paranormal field on some level. Do you have any advice for anyone, who are starting to toy around with these ideas so that they can keep themselves sane?
Well, all right. So there's two parts. One is interacting with the physical world, and one is interacting with the metaphysical world.
Okay.
I don't know if I have anything for the people looking at metaphysics.
That's okay.
It's outside of science, and it is by admission a religious position. And people are going to have religions. I have religion.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's the case. And I think that those people should have reasonable, discussions about whatever the nature of spirituality. When it comes to physical stuff, we can measure it, right? Especially things here right now, right? Can we go look at the Big Bang?
Right.
You can't. You have to examine that differently.
Okay.
Can we look at how things evolved thousands or millions of years ago? We can't. We can only look at secondhand evidence for it. You can't do it right now. But the shape of the Earth, we can look at right now.
Yes.
We can go test it and measure it ourselves.
Yes.
It's been measured.
Indeed.
It's a globe. It's a very specific size.
Yes.
That's been measured. But to the person questioning, could it possibly be flat? The easy thing is, the sun could never set. There is no point, no matter how far away the sun could be, where it would cross the horizon at the same size or very nearly the same size as it was at midday.
Exactly.
Same with the moon. And they'll show videos where there's a camera without a solar filter. You see the glare.
Mm-hmm.
Get a video with the solar filter, and watch it with the solar filter, and you see it's the same size. That's that it could never. And historically, thousands of years ago, people didn't know that when it was nighttime for them, that somebody else was having daytime, but we know that now. They thought that the sun went in tunnels underneath the earth. You look at Greeks and ancient Romans,
right?
The book of Enoch talks about portals. All of those people thought that the sun went underneath the flat earth.
I love it.
We know that now. It couldn't be. So you need to explain that. If you can't explain it, it's not possible.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it. Maybe we can do this again, maybe go down another rabbit hole and get a little deeper, but thank you so much for taking your time with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's been great.
Thanks so much, Mike. All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.